Star Wars poll. We go to Star Wars. We're on Star Wars, right?
Yeah. I was going to say, let's keep it Disney-centric for now.
Okay. So we got a new poll from Rasmussen Reports that found that 31% of Americans believe Disney Star Wars films are worse than the originals. I know on Twitter,
only 31?
A lot of people... Jacob's giving the reaction. A lot of people on Twitter were giving right here. Only 31%. But I will say, I think 31% is still quite a bit. That's a third of the population thinks that these movies sucks compared to the originals. And that's a lot.
Because
that's
also including the people not decided yet. Like they're not really sure whether they like it or not. So it's still like the majority at 31% is still like.
Yeah, I mean, you still have the reluctant people out there who are pretending like The Last Jedi was the greatest Star Wars movie ever because, it pretty much was a film that actual Star Wars fans hated. So you have those holdouts. But, yeah, 31, I don't know if that seems too low or too high, all things considered.
Yeah, and I actually did. So I did respond on their YouTube channel because they wanted to, figure out maybe how to look at this poll a little better. And one of the suggestions that Rasmussen actually responded with is they need to ask whether or not they actually have watched the films, know what the films are. And I'm like, yeah, that might change a lot of things on your poll. If you actually have people that have watched the movies or are aware of them, if they even know. And again, it's what is the originals? Are the originals the original trilogy? Or are they original trilogy and prequels? What does that actually mean? What does Disney Star Wars include? Is it just the Disney Star Wars movies? The sequel trilogy? Is it Rogue One, Solo? Are you lumping them all together? It's a very, very broad question, and I do kind of criticize that in this article here. But let's get into the data here. So there we go. Scroll up a little bit. Oh yeah, that's the question. So the question is, if we scroll up a little bit, the question is, are the new Star Wars movies made by Disney better or worse than the original Star Wars movies? So the poll, which was a survey of 1,069 Americans between March 19 and 2023, so it's just, last week, it's found that 31% of Americans believe Disney Star Wars films are worse than the originals. Only 22% of Americans believe the Disney films are better than the originals. I think that number is really high. I find that super, super high. And I do point out later in this article that there's a lot of other data points that I think that 31% number is a lot higher. It also found that 25% believe the films are of equal standing to each other, while a significant 22% responded not sure. So you have 22%, almost a quarter of Americans think that they are not sure. They don't know. Which again, I think leads to the fact that the question is extremely general. You're not sure what the original films are. What are the Disney films? What are you actually trying to compare here? So I 22% of people are on there. Yeah, there you go. That too. I was gonna lead with something like that, JC, but I felt like that would have been people would have taken that a little too harsh, and I felt like that would have been a little bit uncharitable. I was going to lead with something like that because I've actually been getting really frustrated with some Star Wars people. Trying to argue Star Wars with some people is just it's a struggle because I feel like I'm not even arguing about the films or the TV shows and what actually happens in them. I'm arguing with I'm arguing with some made up assumption that someone has made in their head about what they imagined happened, rather than what actually happened in the show. Yeah, Spencer's pointing out here. It gave no metric to compare either. Yeah, I agree. So and Rasmussen admits that there's probably some issues with this, and they can refine it. And he seemed to indicate that the head guy on YouTube, he seemed to indicate that they were going to try and do that. So I'm actually really interested to see that they refine this, and I hope they do, because I do think this is a fun poll, right? I like talking about this. So here you can see that I'm questioning the poll. It's a little loaded, as the phrase original Star Wars movies could be interpreted in a number of ways. Respondents can view it as George Lucas, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah, but say they were confusing with the prequels, were they?
Well, they could have. Originals. What does original Star Wars mean? Does that mean the prequels? I mean, I don't think that.
I mean, have we gotten to the point in society? Have we gotten to the point in society where Zoomers don't even know that there was an original trilogy? Or have we gotten that old?
I think so. I think there are people that don't watch the original trilogy, and then when they do watch it, they watch it after watching the sequel stuff, and I just think they don't. They're all hyped up on the visuals as Volume Dealer was pointing out, and which I think a lot of it is, I think people do really get hyped up on visuals and look at that rather than a story. So I think that's possible, and I do think that people don't watch the originals. I think there's a lot of people that have not seen them. I mean, there's people my age that haven't seen them. I talk to people, I'm like, you haven't seen Star Wars? What's wrong with you? Like, it's a literal like cultural phenomenon, or it was when I was growing up. Not so much anymore.
Yeah,
I still think The Force Awakens was. I mean, $2 billion the box office. It was huge.
Because there
obviously
was people who had a thirst for another Star Wars film, and then careful what you ask for. You learned that lesson very, very quickly.
Yeah, you wanted more Star Wars. You wanted more Star. It's like Rings of Power. The Star Wars things is very similar to Rings of Power. Big numbers at the beginning. People were interested to see what it is. Very quick fall off because you realize that it's absolute garbage.
That in and of itself is just like, it's just rough to think about. It's like there was so much hype for Star Wars in 2015 that they got $2 billion at the box office, and now here we are, what, 8
almost
years
$1 billion
later?
Domestically. That's huge.
And then here we are 8 years later, and people detest the idea when they hear another Star Wars series is coming out. Like, that's how fast they've killed any enthusiasm towards a brand that had been around since, what, the 70s?
There's a reason there hasn't been a Star Wars movie made since The Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah. So have they been
I think they know that people aren't going to, it's going to be another Solo. It's going to be a bomb because they have destroyed the Star Wars brand, and it's going to ruin Mr. Bob Iger's like narrative about, oh, we just put out too many and people weren't ready for it, yada yada yada. It's like
they literally destroyed the entire brand based on the fact that, one, they couldn't admit that The Last Jedi was a flop, and that critically it was a flop and fans hated it, and two, the person in charge of this whole thing is still in charge of this whole thing with no end
Bob
in sight.
Iger.
Yep.
Bob Iger. I know a lot of people want to point to Kathleen Kennedy, but it's Bob. Read Bob Iger's memoir. He is behind it all. I mean, he talks about how he was very involved in the creation of The Force Awakens with Kennedy, with Alan Bergman, and with J.J. Abrams. He was also the one who bought Lucas's script treatments to ensure that they would never be able to see the light of day, and that Disney would have them. He bought them from George, and he admits to saying that George felt betrayed because George actually thought they were going to use the script treatments.
And everything going on with Disney right now, Bob Iger's just trying to protect his legacy. That's all he's doing right now, because all the stuff's all about, oh, no, it's all the woke stuff that's getting Disney in trouble. It's like, well, Iger was the one who's been pushing this stuff for many, many years. And it wasn't until he realized that this ship was going down and that all the traces of the fallout started with him, that now he's trying to like jump back into the frame and be like, well, I'm going to be the guy that fixes everything, even though I'm the one that set all this stuff in motion in the first place.